I come from a very sales-driven background. I feel like often in different places around the world, sales can sometimes be quite a dirty word almost, and a lot of people don't want to see themselves as a salesperson. But at the end of the day, that's every single business needs it. Every single business needs customers and they need people to sell to, and that is of such importance.
This is Gloneration Podcast, conversations around the new generation of global talents and brands. Ciao, mio host, Simona Lodolo. Welcome to the second season of Gloneration. I'm ready to dive deep with you on Gloneration, so the generation that is shaping the future of culture, economics, and society. With me today from London, Michael Dynan, founder of the Assembly Events and one of the founding directors of Media 10. Ciao, Mike.
Ciao, Simona. How are you? It's lovely to see you.
Yeah, lovely to see you after so many years. A few words about you. Never afraid to explore new territories and always open to new ways of working, Mike successfully set up the events division of Media 10 in South Africa and China, and has recently launched Design in Mumbai. He has run some of the most driven and successful commercial teams in the event industry and has launched several award-winning events, including Design Shanghai, Cynthia D Design Festival, and Best of British. I have the feeling that this is just a short list of the main events you made.
Yeah, well, it's kind of the list up to where we saw each other last. Of course, since then, I've set up a new events company called the Assembly Events Group, and we now have, Design Mumbai, you mentioned one of them there, but we have several other events, both trade events, consumer events, conferences, awards, exhibitions. So, yeah, we've been busy.
You've been defined by Wallpaper as one of the design show heavyweights, which is kind of a definition. So where has everything started, Mike?
It's very kind of Wallpaper to give me that title. I have been very fortunate to work in a lot of design and architectural events because it's a real passion of mine. I got into the events industry previously working in design publishing, so I was already in that industry and that circle and was working with many fantastic brands and brilliant designers. So the move to design events was very natural. But I don't think of myself as a design event organizer. I think of myself as an event organizer who happens to have done quite a lot in the design space. But I've also worked in many other industry sectors. And that's one of the things I really love about my job is getting into a new sector, being able to bring an event to a new market.
Yeah, definitely. So are you more a creative or a businessman?
I would like to say both, because I think it's impossible in what I do to, only to be one of those things. The creative, but anybody entrepreneurial that I've known in the past has to have both of those things by the very nature. Every time we launch a new event, we have to create something from nothing sometimes, from very little. So that you need to have that creativity. But yeah, I do think I'm a businessman, I suppose. I think that was what most people would call me.
So number first and then creativity second, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I do love a calculator.
Mike, you brought these big events and exhibitions to a totally different level because it's not just something that you do in your own country, but you exported a big format, new formats, because you invented them in everywhere in the world. I'm thinking about the design events that you have organized. Why did you decide to export this format?
I think working in any emerging markets is extremely exciting. I think that a lot of what I've learnt to do in my skill set had been done in the UK, in a lot of ways. We're a bit more of an established market, particularly for design events, whereas taking it somewhere like China and you are in this melting pot of excitement where there is so much development and growth, an amazing design and architecture community who are coming through. There's more domestic wealth and more free time. There's more international travel from the country. And all of these factors are leading to this exciting place for design events. So to be able to get there and really to be the very first truly international event in one of these markets is the excitement for me and is the opportunity.
What have you thought the very first time that you said, okay, you know what? I'm going to China. I'm going to do it in China. So what is the
Well,
crazy?
funnily enough, it wasn't the first time that I had been to China. With Media 10, we'd had some successes with our new events, and we'd caused quite a stir in the UK. And some of the more established event organisers wanted to go and explore the Chinese territory with us. And so we went over there. We went on a joint trip for a couple of weeks. We looked at what events we could look to launch. It was still at that time, I'm talking now in about 2007, 2008, it was still too early to launch a design show. That didn't happen until 2014, but we were excited by the potential and obviously excited by the place and the market. It was in a fantastic time there. We tried to get a couple of things off the ground. Unfortunately, they didn't quite work. Everything was done then with a partner, and maybe the partner didn't quite grasp the full potential or the full idea, and there was no animosity, between the parties. It just didn't work. So eventually we came away from there again. And then I wouldn't say I'd fallen in love with China, but I had found excitement that I hadn't experienced before in more established countries, maybe in Europe and places that I was used to work in. And I knew that I would love to have done something. And then it was quite a few years later that the opportunity came through someone else's misfortune, maybe was our good fortune. They didn't manage to get the event off the ground, but they'd been over there and they'd signed some contracts and they'd met some partners, had some relationships, and they didn't want to leave it. But at the same time, they didn't want to finish it. So they literally came to us and said, look, we've got this opportunity. Would you like it? And it was that good fortune that gave us the opportunity to really go for it.
But that's very curious, because this is really a characteristic of a great entrepreneur. You try, and if maybe it doesn't work the very first time, but then you still have, you still have the idea, you still have the goal, and you don't give up until you catch the second train. This is something that it's beautiful.
Absolutely. Never ever give up on anything. If something doesn't work the first time, that doesn't mean it won't the second or the third time. And if you keep going, if you keep having persistence, this can happen.
What is your favorite personality trait about yourself, of course, and how do you think it helped you in pursuing your global career?
I think for me, it's positivity. It's about always remaining as positive as is humanly possible in whatever situation. I think I learned a long time ago that even if something is difficult, even if something is going bad or it's awkward, to face it with a degree of negativity only makes everything harder, makes it worse than it could be. Nothing can ever get better if you face it, with a negative outlook. So I know it's sometimes been annoying to colleagues and family and friends because I can be incredibly positive in the darkest of situations, but there is a reason for that. And that reason is I know that this thing will not get better if we approach it negatively. So, yeah, positivity in everything.
That's absolutely amazing, and I think this is quite contagious. So working with you and with this positivity, I think it's an extra motivation.
It is contagious. It is infectious. And the opposite is true of negativity. It can really, get to bring a team down. I'm very much a team player, and that's how events work. And a positive mentality can really help drive a team, lift a team, motivate a team to doing something. Whereas, unfortunately, a negative outlook will have the opposite effect.
Talking about team and teamwork, how do you handle different cultures?
It's not easy. I made lots of mistakes. I think particularly in China, I think of everywhere in the world that I've worked, China was the most different that it could be in so many ways. The way that people think and the way that the mentality, you really have to understand. My first mistakes were I can get very excitable. I can talk very quickly, talk in a particular accent a lot from the UK in a particular way. that maybe was difficult for people to understand. So straight away I had to tell myself to slow down. And a lot of the time in certain business meetings and when you're dealing with the government in China and an older generation, there will always be a translator. And of course, if you are from part of London, particularly in Essex, where I've lived, we use a lot of local slang terms, a lot of colloquialisms. We use a lot of storytelling. And of course, when you have a translator in the room, they will translate things literally. So in my first couple of weeks when I was there, I remember sitting in a room and saying to a group of people that I had just come to pick their brains. When you say this in the UK, of course, everybody understands what you mean. When you translate that into Chinese, it's taken literally, and people are just looking at you as if, you're a crazy person sitting in the room. So there were lots of times like this that I had to slow myself down, take a pause, and try and talk the Queen's English.
But I think, all of your team, at least the one I met, I think they got used to your very British way of saying things, and you did great. I think everybody loved you in your team.
We did. We made a lot of great friends and, a lot of great acquaintances with our time in China, where I really felt privileged and embraced by the local communities, whether it was the design community, the events community, the business community. We made a lot of great friends. We had a lot of great staff. A lot of people wanted to come and work for us, I think, because we were doing things a bit differently. And I think a lot of people really, really like that.
Yeah, but this is when you go in a different country and you do things differently, sometimes in some places, some countries can be felt like it's complicated, but this is not the way you do things, and you did things attracted people. So they were not scared to do mistakes with you. So this is something that I particularly appreciate, and it's a message that I want to share with the Gloneration.
Sure, I think you've got to be very sympathetic to people and not just say, look, this is how we do it and this is how we're going to do it. And of course, you want to embrace things that can help you locally, and there will always be these things in the market that you can certainly use and you should certainly learn from, and you shouldn't just say this is the way. But we wanted to do things very differently. We wanted to approach things very differently, and there was a lot of people who said to us straight away, this will never work, this can never happen, you will never do this is not the way it's done in China. But there was lots of people who went, wow, look at this is exciting, this is a fun way to do things, we want to get behind this.
No. Is there a moment that you remember, not only in China, but also in all the most recent global adventure and events that you are organizing? Is there a moment that you have felt, I'm not going to make it?
Oh, I don't know if I've ever felt I'm not going to make it. There were times in China, I won't lie, that were very, very difficult. Times when I felt very alone, particularly in the early days when I was there, before we had the big team, before we had many people working and quite a few events. There were times then it was very lonely. There were times I was doing the trips backwards and forwards, often on my own, didn't know so many people there. We had problems with certain partners and everything. And there were times when I felt very alone, and I feel like I could have gone home and pulled the curtains and been quite all right with not going back. But no, not ever giving up, I don't think.
What is, in your opinion, the biggest misconception that people have about events?
I think a lot of people don't realise quite what goes into organising an event of scale. I think a lot of people think it'd be quite an easy thing to do. I've seen a lot of shows fail, not even get to the first year, because they are very difficult. Lots and lots of moving parts to them, particularly if you're doing it in another country, in another territory, and you have all the nuances and the legalities and everything that can go in addition to that. Well, I would say that a lot of events have just never quite got off the ground when perhaps they could have done.
If you could change one thing about your industry, what would it be? Just go straight. Shoot.
Well, it's funny you say one thing, because there's a lot that I want to change. There's a reason for that. I want us, the assembly events, my new company, to be doing things differently. I feel like the industry hasn't evolved fast enough. It just hasn't kept up. It hasn't kept up with technology. It hasn't kept up with all the ways that companies market themselves now. And it certainly isn't keeping up with the future generations. And wanting them to come back to a trade show, effectively, that we know, a trade exhibition, say, that hasn't evolved in decades. How you feel you're going to get the next generations to take an interest, and if you're not embracing other technologies, surely we're going to fall behind. I mean, there's certain events that I know that haven't changed for decades, and I really feel like there's a time that we need to be looking at this.
Do you think that this point of view, which is different from the majority of people working in your industry, is linked somehow to the fact that you have international experience?
Possibly. I think I have seen a lot more than maybe a lot of other organisers. I mean, certainly the technologies that I've seen, working in India now, working in China, they're so advanced in the adoption of their technologies. And that's not to say that we don't have the same technology in the UK. It's the way we use it. It's the way we use it personally and the way we use it in our business. And I think that the events industry in the Europe particularly and the tech world are seen as two different things. Whereas in China, in India, I'm able to use lots of new technologies in a really effective way. And we've pioneered many things over the years and the use of many technologies in with our events. And this is something that I really would like to carry on exploring and do more of.
You worked also with some of the best brands. What are the secrets of adapting your approach? Because all these brands are from different places. You're organizing events in different countries, so you don't need only to sell a space or an event, a concept, but much more.
Sure. Well, I think I always want to put events in at the very top level. I want an event that the really top brands will want to come to. And of course, if you do that, you know that you're producing something of a real quality that then people will want to come to. But of course, that's the most difficult, because often they're the most concerned about their position in the market. Often they're the hardest to deal with, particularly with the design brands. You have to be sympathetic to who they consider to be their peers and who they consider to be decent design brands. And if you start selecting the wrong brands or allowing people in just to help your revenue streams, then you will often fail. You need to be very, very true to these brands. But it's the same in every industry. And one of the things I love about my job is that one day I'll be talking to people in the design industry, and the next day I'll be talking to people in the jewellery industry, and the next day in the hair and barbering industry. I love that about being able to learn about multiple industries and multiple sectors, and to work with experts and to learn a little bit about all of their sectors. I often say to people, I can never pretend to be an expert in your sector. That's for you to do. I want to be an expert in the events industry, and I want to build an event for multiple industries that people want to come to and they want to be a part of. And in order to do that, you've really got to embrace each individual industry and get to know who you need to be working with, and to really become a champion of that industry.
That's pretty tough, though.
I think I can get bored fairly quickly, and for me, I like to move about and work in lots of different sectors and learn about different things. And it's funny, as I say, I can go from having a conversation one day about the design world and Italian furniture, and the next day I'm talking about lab-grown diamonds, and the next day I'm talking about hair care products, and then glasses, and then automobiles. I'm never an expert in any of them, but I love to learn.
And have you moved something from, I don't know, you tested something in the design or in the industry and you moved to some other industry?
Yes, well, absolutely, something that I'm working on at the moment is hopefully a little bit about what I'm saying about the industry needs to do things very differently. And this is something that I learned traveling and have brought back now to the UK. When we launched our design event in China, it was very difficult, as I said, in year one, and it was a very small show, but it was very beautiful. We had the very, very best companies, and we really made a big impression. By the next year, everybody wanted to be a part of it, and it was 4 times bigger, and big queues around the block, and everything was going very, very well. But the biggest eye-opener for me was all of a sudden we had all of these big, major consumer brands who wanted to be a part of this show. So you imagine we have a trade show for architects and designers, and we have kitchens and beds and balustrades and flooring. And all of a sudden we have Bali, the Swiss fashion brand, building a runway down the middle of the show and bringing models in from all over China. All of a sudden we have Nike, and they want to bring their 40 years of the Air Max trainer into the middle of this trade show. Martell Brandy, they built a nightclub in the front of the show. So just because they wanted people to sample the brandy, they brought DJs over, and they built this big nightclub style effect in a trade show. It was incredible. And lots of other brands, and Jaguar and Audi and Porsche we were talking to and working with, and Stella Artois wanted to build the bar. And these were all brands that are very, very difficult to work with in the UK, very difficult to even get through to the right person, let alone get them to spend some of the budgets that these guys were spending, on a year 2 or year 3 show. So that was a real eye-opener. Now, of course, they were in an emerging market, and they said, look, we want to do events. We want, and there's not many events that are on the same level as us. And that was the real moment. I remained in China for a few years, and the show was sold, moved back to the UK, and I thought, I want to do something that's different. I want to put something in a really cool venue that is at the very highest level it can be at, something that these big brands who want to market themselves differently are willing to spend a bit more to be part of, because they get a lot more from it. And all of a sudden, they're not around loads and loads and tons of competitors. They really get something that's exclusive and is more in keeping with the way that they present themselves. So I had the idea, and I was about to launch it, and then of course COVID came and had a bit of a hiatus and put it on the back burner for a little while. And I started working with somebody who was from the hair and fashion industry. And one day I was telling her about this idea and where it came from. She said, you have to launch this in the hair industry. It's what they've been crying out for. Sure enough, she was right. And I took it to meet some people from the industry, and they said, you have to do this for hairstylists. So we launched a new event called HairCon, and it's a very different approach to a trade show, and it's come from that light bulb moment in the middle of Shanghai several years earlier.
Very nice, very exciting. But have you ever felt a cultural struggle, both personally or professional? Because even this example that you gave me, it's a very different cultural approach to the exhibition. So have you ever felt a struggle?
I really try to be as sympathetic to cultures that I'm working with, really try to understand. It can be very difficult at times, but I don't think I've had sort of cultural struggles. I think there was a time, again, talking a lot about obviously China, because it's where I spent most of my time and ended up living there as well as working there, whereas other places I was maybe traveling to. I think I had a bigger team already on the ground in most other places that I've been to. But with China, it was much more about eventually having my whole family move over there, living in a very Chinese neighborhood. So we really had to kind of understand as well as I could. There was something I was very taken aback with at the start, which was when you get to China and start working with this fabulous generation who are coming up, who are just leaving university and so on, they all have an English name or a Western name, as they would say. And I've found myself saying, names are very important to me. I've always, if I come across a name I've never heard before, I always like to ask people where it's come from. My own surname comes from only one particular part of Ireland, and I know we can trace our ancestors back there. And there's a lot for me in a name. And of course, when all of these guys you ask them their name and they give you an English name or a Western name. And I was sort of saying to people, how come? And they said, we've been taught or we've been told we need to in order to get on with what you'd say, I suppose, a Western company. So I said, well, what if we don't want to do this? What if I want to learn your Chinese names? What if I want to call you by Chinese names? Would that be okay? And of course, everyone, yes. I'll be honest, it did get quite hard at some points, as much as I did try to remember. That was quite a big thing for me. And it may seem like a small thing, but for me, it was a big thing in being a different company. I'm coming here to live and to work. You shouldn't be having to change your name for me. I should be learning yours. And so eventually they ended up, the team giving me a Chinese name. So I had a Chinese name.
Yeah, what was that?
So I knew you was going to say that.
You don't remember?
So my name is Michael, or Mike Dynan, and they called me Dynan.
Yeah. Do you remember the meaning of the strokes?
Apparently, it meant big sales year. So I apologise to anyone who Chinese or speaks Mandarin for that pronunciation, but apparently that's what it means.
Oh, great. Talking about the future, what do you think could be your worst competitor? I'm not talking about brands. I'm talking about there's a lot of discussion around AI, blah, blah, blah. So
I think it's the next generations, who shouldn't be our competitors. They should be, our next Gloneration, our next generation who should be coming through. But unfortunately, I don't feel that they're excited by the events industry. I think there's quite a few industries that I'm noticing that are going through this. Lots of people are saying, getting people to come and work in certain industries is becoming harder and harder and harder. But I'm actually talking about our visitors, getting people to come to events. Of course, now with social media and with technologies and with the way that children are communicating with each other, the importance of face-to-face meetings, which is obviously what I love and what I believe in, is becoming less and less important, possibly. I really feel that we need to excite the Generation Alpha and Generation Z, even the millennials to come to events and to meet face to face and still put as much emphasis and importance in that as maybe we did in former generations.
I'm always a great fan of direct communication. We meet each other. Work from home was okay during COVID, but even right after, I always felt that people wanted to go back to meeting each other, having fun together, because it's not just meeting, but it's more really strong connections.
We are trying, at the same time as trying to get more people in the room, we're also looking at doing exciting things to spread our events more globally, because we can embrace these technologies. And okay, we want people in the room, but if they can't be in the room, we can then still use these new technologies to take the events around the world. So just recently we did some work where we set up an online sales platform at the same time as the real event was happening, and people could actually go online, they could watch the people in their booths, and they could purchase the goods from wherever they were in the world, and I think this is something that, with new technologies and the way the new generation, like to shop, communicate, that we can really use these events for good. But at the whole time, we've got to be saying, but it's nowhere near as good as being in the event. You've got to come here, and to get the full experience, you've got to be here.
Totally agree. I'm with you on that. Is there a local sentence or a quote in Chinese or in India that represents you? the most?
I suppose I was thinking earlier when we were talking about, how many different industries. There's a quote very much again from from London that says, jack of all trades and a master of none. Sometimes I think I like to learn all these industries, at a certain level, but would never pretend to be the expert. So I can always learn, and I can always learn about multiple industries on any given day, which is a great thing for an event organizer to have.
No, we're doing this for the new generation of global talents and brands. Can you mention the three most important traits a new global talent must have to succeed in your industry?
Events is a very people-driven industry. It's a very commercial industry. It's a very sales-driven industry, and people really do still need to communicate. People need to pick up the phone. People need to get in the car and get on a plane and go and see people. And I don't think that will ever change. But I do feel that it's not maybe as natural to the next generation of people who are coming through, and I think that's a very, very important thing for an event organizer.
One. The other two? Do you have another one? At least another one.
Yeah, I mean, embracing the technologies that we've said, do things differently. Look at how you can make these events more exciting. Look how we can make them different to the next person. Look how we can make them exciting to the next generation of people coming through. And don't be scared. Don't be scared to launch things. Don't be scared to have ideas and to try things. As we've said, if you don't try, you don't get things done.
Yeah, absolutely. So now the Gloneration Masterclass. Let's suppose we start a masterclass on how to become a global talent and manage big events and exhibitions. As a professor, what subject would you teach?
For me, sales. I come from a very sales-driven background. I feel like often in different places around the world, sales can sometimes be quite a dirty word almost, and a lot of people don't want to see themselves as a salesperson. But at the end of the day, that's every single business needs it. Every single business needs customers, and they need people to sell to, and that is of such importance. And again, another learning from China when I was a sales director when I first went over there, and that was translated. We were in a big meeting room, and it said obviously my name and sales director translated on the card, and nobody wanted to talk to me when I was talking to yes, you can imagine. And when I was talking to my Chinese colleagues, they said, "Oh, sales director, it's very low here. It's a very low position." Whereas obviously it's a very elevated position in Europe and in other parts of the world. That was quite an interesting take home for me. It was almost on day one. And I've thought that a lot, and I've thought that a lot about the design industry over the years. There's been some incredible design talents that I've seen, but without the commercial side behind them, they don't succeed. And then talking about all these events and great ideas that people have had, if you don't start with the revenue in order to fund all the other things, then you won't do it. And I've seen a lot of people want to do an event and they want to go straight to the really nice, glamorous part of the event maybe, and not, they haven't got the revenue to get there. And for me, that's the way you launch anything, is by often as well. A lot of things I've done, I've had to grow organically. I haven't had a big pot waiting for me to go. I've had to sell these events in order to get them off the ground. So I think that would probably be the thing that I would try and teach.
Yeah. Very useful. I would come to your lessons because I'm still I feel that sales is, as you said already, for my generation was something that was not taught properly.
Yes.
Like raising money at the beginning of my career, most of the salespeople were men. I don't know why.
That's very true. I mean, historically that is the case, but actually, I would say I've actually probably now employed more saleswomen, sales girls than salesmen. Actually, in the events industry, I found that they've actually been more successful, which has been great.
Oh, that's cool. We are good. We are. Last questions before our game. Since the second season, I'm collecting questions from my audience. They were not specifically directed to you, but
Okay.
I selected one that I think it really fits you and what you do. Is there a country or a market that you still haven't explored, but that is very attractive for you?
Yes, yeah, India was the one. I'm so pleased to be doing that because India was top of my list of places that I wanted to go, wanted to see, hadn't visited, loved the culture, loved the people, loved the food, the music, loved everything about the place. So to be able to go there and work. And something else, just quickly on the sales thing, something else I love about India is everybody is a salesperson. It's in the blood. It's a nation of entrepreneurs at every single level. I mean, you know, obviously they've got some incredible, amazing companies and talent at the very top, but even the people who are working to get by on the streets, you know, very much looking for to do a sale or to do a deal. So that I've absolutely loved. So I'll spend some more time there at the moment. Then South America is the part of the world I've probably travelled the least personally. It's a part of the world that I would love to see. I'd love to find out what's going on in you know, certainly in kind of Brazil and Argentina in this area.
Okay, good. So our Gloneration game, I will define some areas or life skills, and I'm asking you to define yourself, either local. By local, you can mention, British, Chinese, anywhere else, or global. For example, food, global or local?
Global.
Education?
Local.
Local where?
I think the British education system is still fantastic.
Sport?
Local football teams, local clubs, very dear to my heart. Yeah.
Creativity?
Global.
Family?
Local.
Arts and culture?
Global.
Beauty or appearance?
Global.
Design?
Global.
Music?
Absolutely global. It's, as you can see, this is one of my huge passions. I'm a frustrated musician. I love live music, and I could listen to music from anywhere in the world, from any culture.
Movies?
Local.
Local? British?
Yeah, British movies.
Holidays or destinations?
Definitely global.
Time management?
If you're going to work globally, you've got to be prepared to do that.
Global. Problem solving?
Local to where you are.
Empathy?
Again, local to where you are in the world. You should always be as sympathetic to the local cultures that you're working. Remember, you've been invited here, you've been welcomed here, you've been treated here, and although you're going to do things a bit differently, you're going to make sure that you do it sympathetically.
I really love what you're saying, because in almost 9 years that I've been in China, and somehow also here in the US, I don't feel that most of the people have this natural thought, because they still think sometimes it's not, they don't do it because they really want, or it's not something logical, but they really feel that they have their own way, and their own ways is for sure better than the one that they find locally. So it's a great message.
You've got this opportunity when you live and work in these other countries to really learn from the other cultures and to really get some great life experiences. And if you don't do that and you close your eyes and your ears to what's going on around you, then you're really missing out on fantastic opportunity.
Love it. Leadership style?
Leading by example. I think I've never asked anyone to do anything that I wouldn't be willing to do myself. Often been the first in and the last out, particularly when we're launching something and doing something new for the first time. Roll my sleeves up and have a go at every job that everybody is doing, and try and show people that that's the way to do it. Try and bring people with you and motivate people.
Lovely. Strategic thinking?
I like the time of my career where I'm able to teach people a little bit, when I'm able to share a bit of knowledge and impart a bit of knowledge with the team. I love seeing the next generation of staff really learning something and then taking it and doing it better. And that's been a really exciting thing for me over the years.
What is next for you, Mike?
So a lot more time in India. We want to really get that right. It's a fantastic time to be working with the design community in India, and then a lot more time with the assembly. We're having a great time with some really good people we're working with. Something else I've learned on my travels is about collaborating with people. I feel like the assembly, we called it the assembly because the idea is to assemble many great people together, and a lot of the things we're doing are in partnerships, and we want people to know that we'll be a great partner to work with. We want to bring our skill sets, we want you to bring your skill sets, and we want to collaborate and do something really effectively. That's what we want to be doing.
Wow, that's really a great suggestion, but there were plenty today with you, Mike. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story.
My pleasure. Thanks very much. Lovely to see you.
Guys, what to say? I loved meeting Mike again. I'm sure you have plenty of ideas and suggestions that you got from him today. I hope you like it as much as I did with me, your host, Simona Lodolo. We meet in a couple of weeks. Bye.